Lee, thank you so much for doing this interview for me. Can you tell me how you ended up in Woodford?
I came to Woodford because I had come back to England after living in the Sudan with a child who was of mixed race, and I needed somewhere to live in an environment that would be welcoming to mixed children.
And so obviously you'd come back to England, but where were you living?
I was living in Harpenden, which is a more rural area, and there aren't many mixed families there. And also, I didn't feel I fitted back into the area where I'd grown up. I'd travelled a lot in between. I'd lived in Italy and I'd lived in the Sudan for 7 years, and somehow England seemed to be a little bit too narrow for me. But I thought I would try the edge of London, and Warden Housing were particularly looking for single families and providing homes, and they were building Chartwell Court. Unfortunately, they found that they ran into financial difficulties, but the council took over and finished the building and was able to house a lot of people from the Redbridge housing as well into the new building.
And I'm sure you told me that it was on the site where Sir James Hawke used to live?
That's right. I might understand that it was a site between the statue of Winston Churchill and alongside the Jubilee Hospital where Sir James Hawke had lived. And I think maybe they knocked down 2 or 3 houses, and the big gardens gave ample space for quite a large block of flats.
So you move into Woodford on your own with a young child, and the first thing you notice is it is more diverse.
Yes, definitely. Lots of different people and easy access on the train and buses from the high road. I knew I would find it much easier to get a job either at a hospital or in offices, because this is just far more industry, light industry in this area than there was in Harpenden, where there was absolutely nothing, only a dormer town with people living there.
So you could get work, but what about your social life?
Well, I moved here without knowing a soul, and the one thing I had done all my life had been Scottish country dancing. I managed to contact somebody who ran a local Scottish dance company in the area, and they invited me along to an event at which I met Doctors Chris and Kathleen Whitfield, who told me they ran Scottish dance evenings in the Grinnell room at St Mary's Church, and as it was only about 500 yards away, I could get to it quite easily. And I went down and very soon got to know a lot of people, and particularly people who were involved with St Mary's Church. And then I decided I would join the church as well.
So you've had a 40-year association with the church.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very long time. So as part of that, you've also had a bit of an association with the hall, but it was your husband Ian, wasn't it?
That's right. I married Ian in 82, and he, as an architect, really was soon recognised by other people at St Mary's as being somebody who could be of use as a trustee, and he eventually took it very much on board. He was semi-retired, so he had the time and was looking for something to get his teeth into, and he, along with Barbara and with the help of Philip Swallow, and he introduced our good friend Nick as a reliable builder and practical pair of hands, and over the following years they did an awful lot to restore the Memorial Hall.
So I know that Nick sorted out the back,
Yes.
which I think was on the recommendation of Ian.
That's right.
I know that Barbara and Ian worked very closely together, and I know that in the late 1980s, the hall was in a dreadful condition, and he was quite a significant part of ensuring that it was
I think he
renovated.
Yes, it was renovated, and I think he put in got the heating sorted out and the lighting. they wanted to do more. He designed new toilets, which had been, in rather a sad, sorry state a long time back. And it was also particularly the work on the spire to renovate that was really his swan song. And after he had done all the work and finished the spire, he then felt that there was nothing more for him to do in Woodford, and he couldn't find any other projects, and he thought, well, that was the time for him to go.
And so you're saying that he died?
And he died.
He
yes.
died. So I'm sorry to hear that. But when
he was ready, he felt he was ready to go when he went.
So out of all the jobs he did for the hall, he loved doing the spire.
The spire was the best thing he did. He really, did everything to do that. He raised the money for it, working on it, his drawings of it, because he was a superb draftsman. And in fact, having retired, he had gone back to work doing the drawings, because his drawings were better than the computer drawings that younger architects were producing. And he worked on heritage buildings all over the country. And it was the heritage side that was absolutely fascinating, because when he looked at a wall in a church, he knew what was behind the plasterboard and how thick the wall would be and where the water pipes would be and the heating. So he really came into to the fore and did most of his inspiring work in the last 10 years of his life.
And it's quite interesting, because I can hear that you were very supportive of him. I can tell that just by the way you're speaking about him.
Oh yes, he was a superb draftsman, entirely engrossed in what he was doing, and if he was working on a project, he would work through the night. At one point he had a drawing board in our large bedroom, and I would go to bed and sleep, and he would sit there with his headphones on, non-stop music, and draw, and I would wake up in the morning covered with about 15 sheets of paper.
Lovely. Okay.
I didn't mind. He got involved with his drawing work and entirely engrossed in what he was doing, and he left me free to entirely engross myself in our garden when we moved to Chelmsford Road.
So now tell me about Chelmsford Road. I've heard that this was something really quite special.
The house, number 28 Chelmsford Road, is a very special house. It was one of the best built houses in Chelmsford Road. The way the builder had finished it off was to a much higher standard than any of the other buildings. The entrance hall has still got the black and white paving stones that were put down when it was built about 1870. The gargoyles, the finish of the cornices in the rooms, the downstairs rooms were built to a very high standard. A big fireplace with a lovely mantel, carved with little sprays of flowers, and in the middle there's a little dog with his head on its paws. The house was originally built to face Malmesbury Road, with the entrance in Malmesbury Road, and families that lived there in the past used to park the baby in a pram in the porch facing Malmesbury Road, because that was the sunny side of the house in the morning, and the sun would move round the corner, and in the afternoon when it was hot, the house was shaded.
And
it
told me it was a school.
It has been, over the years, it had been, I know, both a doctor's surgery and a dentist's surgery. The house was 2 stories high with an attic and a little balcony overlooking Chelmsford Road, which was very unsafe for children. I had a lovely conversation with a lady who lived there in the 1950s and 60s. Her aunt ran a 2-dame nursery school in the 2 big rooms downstairs, and she and her brothers and sisters lived with their father, who was the brother of the main teacher, in the house above. And the house has got a lovely curved staircase from upstairs, big wide one, and apparently they'd had garlands of white flowers painted all the way up the wall, hand painted, and the house was really beautiful inside, with a great coloured window Unfortunately, by the time I'd moved in, the house had been converted into 3 flats. The stained glass window was long gone, and only the finer features in the downstairs part of the house remained. And they moved the front door round into Chelmsford Road, and what was originally the front door with a lovely arched window above it was my kitchen.
Oh.
So my kitchen was tiny. It was about 6 feet wide, and it had a beautiful window that faced the sun, and all morning I had sunshine in the kitchen.
So did you convert it back into a house, or you bought a flat?
No, I bought the ground floor flat. The person living above is still there, and the flat on the top floor, the roof was rebuilt when it was converted about 1970, and that was converted into a small 2-bedroom flat, which is a lovely flat. I believe they can almost see as far as Dartford Bridge from the top.
Oh my goodness me.
But
I know that your pride and joy, though, was your garden.
The garden was nice, a lovely garden, a very long garden with a path that was about 70 feet long. Lots of interesting, a square lawn, but with garages at the back. It meant that it was a funny T shape. But I was able to put lots of interesting plants in. If I found something I liked, I shoved it in, probably in the wrong place with the wrong soil, but it grew, and we got rid of loads of trees. Unfortunately, I think it is now rather overgrown, but it's still around. The house is still there.
Right. Okay, so the house is still there.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Okay, so you've lived here 40 years. What other changes have you seen?
I feel the area is much more mixed. There's always been a lot of young people, as older people tended to move out of the area once their families had grown up, and of course the big houses here would sell well. A lot of people, I think, bought houses here as investments for their retirement, and once the children had grown up and the children moved out of the area, the older people moved out. There's always been a lot of change. I was impressed always with a vast amount of music and entertainment in this area. I think it must be the heritage of maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation people, particularly the Jewish input, because they are so musical and so good at entertainment in all forms, drama, classical music, jazz. There is a vast amount of music in this area, and that comes through in the children in the schools, and that was very encouraging.
And so not only have you sort of seen those sort of changes, you did mention to me that you were a little bit concerned about the church and about the fact that maybe that hasn't changed in the same way that the community around it has changed.
I think that's it in a nutshell. There was a dearth of young families that felt that they could really express their worship the way they would like to. For several years, there was a strict tradition of the church not changing the services, not changing the attitudes towards having children involved in the church services. At a time when we should have been encouraging families to stay, a lot found that the services offered at All Saints was far more popular, and as a result we have members in St Mary's now who have been members for 50 years or more, and we have a lot of young people coming in, but there's it's rather thin in the middle, because
Right.
not many people stuck with St Mary's when they were denied the opportunity to do some of the things they would like to have done.
Okay, so, but things have changed now, haven't they?
Things have changed drastically. I mean, Ian has worked tremendously with the young families. I really feel that's where he feels most at home, with the younger families and the younger children, but also understanding all age groups, which is important.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It's good.
It's good. And so I know that you've remarried, and but does that mean that you might move out of Woodford?
Oh, no. I'm going to stay in Woodford. My daughter still lives in the area, and with 4 children, who are 3 are still at Woodbridge, and very much integrated in Woodford, so they will be here. But also, now my roots are here, and Woodford offers me the best of being in the countryside. I live with Epping Forest at one end of Chelmsford Road and London at the other end. What more could I want? I spent my working life in Somerset House, and walking round Covent Garden was my lunchtime entertainment on a daily basis. So to move out of London is not for me. My family are London people, and I was born and bred in London, and I feel very proud to be a Londoner, and Woodford suits me absolutely down to the ground.
It's so lovely to hear. Just one final thing. I know that you have mentioned just briefly that your involvement with the hall, but I also know that for the last few years you've been involved in looking after the children during the holidays.
Only briefly, in as much as I help with a bit of dancing, because that was my forte. I can't sing, but I do love dancing, and the Scottish Dancing Association in the area is very strong, and the Scottish dancing is infectious. There are clubs everywhere there's been any British people in the whole world, and I've just had 3 fantastic weeks in Japan on a Scottish dance holiday, and I could do it in New Zealand and Vancouver just as easily.
So have you taught the children here any Scottish dancing?
I've done a little bit, but we haven't managed to get enough young people together to get it going. When I have a bit more time, it is on a back burner. Maybe we will try and get a young Scottish dance group growing again. I know the Scottish Dance Association nationally would love us to get more people dancing.
I think that's something that Woodford could really do with, and I think it's a really brilliant thing that you're here to help that to develop. So I'm going to put out a challenge that anybody who wants to learn Scottish dancing should come and speak to you.
That would be good. I think I will need to get something to do now I'm fully retired, and my husband can spare me the time. Yes, I would like to do it.
Thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated it.
That's good.